Well, hello, everybody, and thank you all very much for attending. We have almost 500 people, 487 registered for this event. So thank you very much for attending. And I'd also like to thank the expert panelists for joining us, Anthony Panapinto from Procter & Gamble, David Bianco from Epiroc, and Ed Stevens from ABB. And helping me moderate this is Teg Matthews. And Teg is in Kelowna, British Columbia, ladies and gentlemen. And it is 1,000,000 degrees in Teg's house today. And there's no air conditioning because in Canada, you don't always really need to pay for heat, yeah, but not air conditioning. So if Teg melts and goes off camera, we'll still have the benefit of his voice and his comments, but we'll just whatever you can, Teg, and we'll go without you if need be, and we'll understand. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the whole idea of this expert panel was that we were going to try to provide a much more realistic perspective than just sort of, if you will, theory or philosophy. If you think about having a mission statement, should zero harm be in your mission statement or not? You can hear lots of academics talk about this, but eventually somebody has to decide. And these are the people that actually have to make these sort of tough decisions. The session today is on leading indicators. What do you rely on? And we started a few weeks ago with this expert panel. We were just talking about complacency and COVID. And so if I can, I'll just sort of read you the overview, if you will, of the session here today, and then I'll start with the questions. So we all know that leading indicators, or some leading indicators, are more reliable than others. Unfortunately, none of them are perfect. Near-miss reports are valuable simply in terms of preventing the next one, but the number of near-miss reports being turned in is also important. Observations can be a good leading indicator for problem areas or behaviors, but only if they are quality observations. Hazard reports can also be reliable, and in some cases, audits can be used as leading indicators. However, a low quality audit that provides a favorable score could also lead to a false sense of security. But in the end, someone has to decide, as I said before, what will this organization or corporation believe in enough to change course, change senior operations personnel, or stop the operation entirely. So again, everybody, if you're just tuning in, this isn't advice. This is just what these companies are doing. I don't want to be so crass as to say take it or leave it, but it's not advice. If it confirms a bit about what you're doing, great. And if it provides a different perspective that you want to look at, well, we hope that's valuable as well. But in the end, just like these folks, you will have to make your own decisions. And I'm not sure why I keep thinking I can read without glasses on, but there's no hope. So if I can though, I just before we get right into the whole leading indicators, I was just wondering if we could just Anthony, starting with you, if I could just get a brief update on what's happening in the sort of Cincinnati, Ohio area with COVID. And since, for those of you, again, if you're just tuning in, Anthony is an epidemiologist. I think I've got that right. He's also got a PhD in law. But he has not bored us once yet with any legal jargon, but he has simplified a fair bit of the technical jargon for COVID with us. So, Anthony, even if you just if you could just maybe tell everybody what you just told me before the show about the you know, the media hyping up the airborne versus the droplet thing, and then just tell us a bit about Cincy in Ohio and how things are going there, if you could.
Yeah, so just quickly, again, there's been a lot in the media about airborne versus droplet, and again, this is really a continuum. So it's about exposure, and infection is about, you know, inhaling a certain burden of viral particles. And so, you know, the real important things to remember are masks are source control. They prevent distribution of respiratory droplets that might contain the virus, and distancing reduces your exposure because the droplets concentrations decrease. So it really is about, you know, kind of a source receiver model of exposure. And the media has made much about this, and, you know, has significantly confused people about ventilation systems being a source of exposure versus air movement being able to better distribute exposure. So there's some great case studies out there about infection in buses and small office complexes, and you're all aware of the famous Skagit choir practice that turned catastrophic with a significant number of infections. So I think we have to put this into the context again for people of the most important thing is that we get back to those foundational behaviors that are true of any respiratory virus. Masks are good, distancing is good, hand washing is good. Those can all really help us. And again, when you're out in the community, making sure you know who you're associating with and what their exposure history has been. In terms of how things are going in Cincinnati, we were on an acceleration of cases a few weeks ago. Things have started to get back under control. Ohio put escalated its mask requirements, did a lot of public service announcements. Some restaurants were actually shut down where they were not complying. And so I think that reinforcement has helped a bit. So I hope that gives you the perspective you were looking for, Larry.
Well, yeah, and Anthony, you know, when you called yesterday, of all the times, you know, the telephone tag back and forth, I'm right there with the CAA tow truck getting the vehicle jumped right when you're doing it, and it's just it's just so easy. Like he's saying, you know, which, because it's an RV and there's a bunch of batteries, and he's just asking me which one's the positive one, and without even thinking, Ed, it reminded me of your story. I just got right beside him there, and I said that it's right over there, and I'm like just looking at him, and he's looking at me, and I went, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And away, but it's difficult to remember that, you know, 6 feet, right? You know, we started the whole thing off really properly, and it wasn't until he sort of had one innocent question, and I just went, yeah, without thinking. It's easy to make that mistake, right? So it's certainly our area is not a big problem, like, thankfully, and we're not in any kind of sort of, you know, people wear masks if they want a lot of the times in stores, but it's not a requirement or a law, or nearly, you know, it doesn't seem to be people so concerned. Now, David, you're in Texas. We hear obviously some stuff in the news about Houston, and I always worry that the media is trying to make things just as sensational as they can. I guess it's their job. But how is it in Texas? How are things now?
Well, I'm in the Dallas area, and Houston and Dallas and the major cities, Austin, have been, you know, had the ramp up in after Memorial Day at the 25th of May, had some ramp up of cases. They also had a change in the way they calculated cases in about the 20th of May. So some of that data changed as well, but of course that's not really talked about, but it's factually true. So we did have bars opening 50%, restaurants, and now the bars are closed. The restaurants got to 75%, now they're back to 50. you have to wear masks in public, and you can't gather externally in public in groups of more than 10 right now. And there has been a fairly decent reduction in Dallas County. We were seeing over 1,000 cases a day, and we're down in the 600 range now. I say down, that's not a small number, of course, but relatively it's almost half. So the trend is going in the right direction, which is really obviously what we're looking for. And I think the other major cities are seeing a similar kind of thing, but the biggest outbreaks have been along the border cities and in the major metropolitan areas. Those have been where the major impacts have been.
Okay. Ted, I really want to make sure I get to ask you a question or two before you have to disappear again in the heat, potentially. But there was actually, I heard an outbreak in Kelowna. So what's happening? What's happening there?
Bluntly, it seems to be the same story that seems to be going around in a lot of places at the moment. There was somebody coming from out of town. People didn't do the social distancing thing. People seeing old friends. And suddenly we went from a situation of having sort of 1 infected people. I think the last number I saw was about 30, but it's impacted. But what we've now got is this last number I saw was like 1,000 people on self-quarantine from those 30. Because once you start looking at who you're in contact with, it just exponentially kind of explodes, right? So, so yeah, it's kind of weird. To put it mildly.
Yeah, to put it mildly. Is everybody having to wear masks and stuff, like going into stores and things like that? Are restaurants open still? What about bars?
It's again, like we've been talking about the last few weeks, depending where you go, some places are really strict on it. Other places, it's just like any Tuesday 2 years ago. It's there's almost no rhyme or reason to it. And we talked a lot about resilience on the last of these calls, and it plays into that space. It's what people are willing to accept, what they're willing to do, and yeah, it's interesting to see how different people react. You talked about a minute ago, difficult to remember the 6 feet thing, and some people are very open about it. When you're walking around, they're pushing people away. They're doing this kind of swimming kind of motion to make sure that they've got space, and other people not at all. So there's that lack of consistency almost.
Well, no, with the tow truck driver and me, both of us we started off, we were trying to, like, nobody was trying to do any at all, and it just he just couldn't, he wasn't sure which one was the positive terminal, and without even thinking, I just went over to show him. And I was a bit surprised, but it is a little, he wanted to make sure he had the right one, right? Anyhow, Ed, leaving Ed lives in Florida, everybody. So there was a reason I was kind of leaving Ed till last year. So Ed, how bad is it, and is it getting better?
I don't think we're getting better. I think we had 9,000 cases confirmed yesterday. So we've still been, between the 8 to 11,000 cases per day. The data is so all over the board. The state of Florida is not really transparent on the cases and how they're measuring the cases. And we just had a conversation about this before we got on the call. So really getting good factual information on where we're at is very difficult. And then, as you know, schools are opening, and there's lots of lawsuits going on trying to keep schools from opening. So that's kind of taking the attention away from some of the other things. So, but it doesn't seem to be slowing down. We're starting to see more and more people exercise social distancing, wearing masks in stores. There's no mandate. In Orange County, where I live, there is a mandate to wear masks, but it's not enforced. So, time will tell.
Okay. But I mean, is it flattening it? Well, I guess it's flattened at about 10,000 a day, right? I mean, that's not a.
Yeah, our fatality rates, as as Anthony was talking about you take a look at your total cases, and then you look at how many people are occupying the ICUs, and then you can kind of do the math through there and start to see what your run rate is going to be for fatalities based off the data that we've used to, from what we've experienced so far. So each day they're getting higher, and I think it's either that peak is starting to show itself, but the total cases, from what I'm seeing, is still staying consistently around that 8 to 10,000 mark each day. So
Yeah, well, ladies and gentlemen, Jessica from Cargill in Nicaragua was going to join us, and I'd love to hear how things are going in Central America. But this far north, it seems. But let's move on sort of to the leading indicators. The first one I want to sort of ask, there are 10 common leading indicators I mentioned: near miss reports, hazard IDs, observations, leadership communications, walkarounds, audits, inspections, employee suggestions, risk assessments, pre-shift briefings, and depending on the company, they may also have anticipating error rate or state conversations. So if I could, I'd just sort of like to start off with Anthony, though, in terms of leading indicators with health and hygiene perspective. Anthony, what leading indicators do you sort of try to present to your senior management group? Start, if you can, from health and hygiene, and then which ones do you folks find just the most reliable from I don't want to say a mundane safety and health point of view. It just seems far less sensational these days compared to COVID. But when you're talking leading indicators about health and hygiene of these various pandemics, I know you've expressed your not frustration before, but that it's not that easy to get everybody to listen to you. So anyhow, just tell us how you go about presenting a leading indicator case in health and hygiene, and then if you can, a bit about what P&G believes in terms of health and safety reliable leading indicators.
Yeah, so let me touch, so thanks, Larry. Let me touch on we handle a number of high potency raw materials. And in that case, we really rely on our pre-shift briefings. So starting from the factory floor up, do we have our ventilation systems functioning correctly? Is the process reliability what we expect it to be? So again, this is all about containment of chemistry. And you can think of it this very same way with COVID. Does everybody have a mask on? Is everybody social distancing? Because it really is an issue of exposure. And so we find, pre-shift briefings where we have a number of criteria. That is the right to run. So ventilation systems are centerline and check. Process reliability is checked. Any root causes of spills or process upsets have been eliminated by the prior shift. If not, what are the maintenance activities that have to go into that? And then during the course of the work shift, we rely often on condition audits. So what is happening in the process? And are we ready if we have to enter that chemical process in terms of our PPE readiness, in terms of the conditions and the anticipated exposure? So you can apply that to many, many things. So, pre-shift briefings, those audits, and we do ramp up those audits or those conditions and give leadership visibility. So how are their ventilation systems running and maintained? How are their conditions? Meaning, as far as the impact of process reliability on spills and the number of touches on the equipment as a means to try and help people, consolidate that into their thinking. And so that's how we very much approach it from a health and a hygiene preventative medicine point of view. And again, all that is extrapolatable to COVID prevention. I think on safety, you know, at P&G, we use any number of these things. Of course, pre-shift briefings, daily direction setting are really important from an overall EH&S point of view. You know, I think condition audits, behavior observations, near-miss reports, those all play a part in giving a total picture and keeping people focused on risk and what they need to do. So I don't think there's a pariah or a single tool that we found. I think it really is about keeping people focused on the risk, talking about the risk, keeping them focused and having conversations in it, both on the factory floor and as we elevate that up the chain of command, if you will, keeping people focused on those right preventative measures.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously haven't been nearly as many P&G plants probably as you have, but I remember at the pre-shift briefings, they were, you know, getting people to think about it. Simple, but you know, what's the worst thing that would likely happen today from a safety perspective, and just having people think about that. You know, what would be some of the precursor states, and then they extended that thinking to quality as well too. And so I mean, I saw, like what you said, a lot of value in the pre-shift briefing. And again, the people that I saw were very engaged, which is, you know, in all of these things, there's that quality component that has to be there as well too, for the whole thing to work. All right, so back to the can't read without the glasses, Larry. So David, let me, I mean, I know some of them, but certainly not all of them at Epiroc. But which leading indicators do you think are the most important, or which one, you know, in combinations? And if, you know, which ones do your senior man, like if you wanted to get a significant change from your senior leadership, which leading indicators do they could be exactly the same, but which leading indicators do they seem to take the most stock in?
Well, I think, you know, since we went to a mask required at all times, our biggest leading indicator right now is people behaviorally following that and understanding that, and having people that are looking out for that. We've had a few situations where we've had some folks who were finding it pretty difficult to follow. We've tried to provide flexibility in what type of face covering. Matter of fact, we've tried to get away from the use of the word mask because it has a political connotation in and of itself, I think. And so we just say face covering because we also allow face shields. So we've tried to offer some flexibility because people in our area work in hot areas out in the factory or out in our test pads. So they need some relief, and yet to be able, and they're, you know, outdoors. So there's a little reduction of risk. So really understanding what people want and engaging them, and then monitoring and working with those who are finding it difficult, and then following through on that expectation. One of the things, you know, we went to management and said, you know, we need your voice on this. And so we have literally finished yesterday the video from our president that will be presented probably first thing next week to discuss the PPE, to discuss the expectations, to discuss why it's important, and why from a business and a personal standpoint, and recognizing the difficulty. So I'd say empathy and enforcement and reinforcement are really the things right now that we're focusing on, because when we see people aren't doing it, we're trying to leverage their situation to understand it, because maybe we don't, but we also are saying for the good of everybody else, because everything we do is for all the people who are at work who have to be there. That's why we do what we do. So, and those people that are there, they're one of those 300 or 400 people too. So it's kind of getting that empathy loop going on there that really, I think, is what makes people want to say, okay, I get it. And it's bigger than just my personal fallback or my personal resistance. It's a bigger picture than that.
David, like the way you sort of measure that is by just, I mean, I know you well, just going out and talking to your folks and being able
Yeah.
to just gauge it like,
Visual
right,
observation. Yep.
well, right, rubber meets the road. You go out, you
Yeah.
talk to your people, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I've talked with them too. I mean,
Yeah.
they're pretty straight up, right? So they'll
Yeah.
tell you.
But we have hotspots in our factory for certain areas, certain work areas, certain groups are a little less easy to comply than others because of different various reasons, more confined space, more hotter areas. So we try to really focus on those folks because we know that they're under the most pressure to resist both physically and emotionally.
Yeah, it was interesting. My mother told me that my grandfather, who was the vice president of Dominion Rubber of Canada, walked the floor every day. He knew 660 of his employees by name and their children by name. And I thought about that. Like if you want to leading into, you want to find out what's really going on. That's one way of really finding out what's going on. It's just that's a very time consuming rubber meets the road strategy, but it would also be very reliable for sure. Ed, what all do you guys use in terms of, what leading indicators do you find the most important yourself, or what ones do you look at, and make sure are okay, before you feel comfortable? And then tell us a bit which ones you might be presenting to your leadership group if you were trying to get a significant change.
Well, if you just focus on the COVID piece of that, like the rest of the group here, the only thing that was really interesting that I might add to it than what the other two have said is, you have a certain level of movement within your facilities, and you get different levels of employees that take the social distancing, the face coverings, the washing the hands. You take those things very serious, and so then once you get to that level where it starts to become self-policing, you start to realize that maybe we have to start looking at 5S a little different. Everything in its place, everything has a place, because of the way our products, our workstations are set up, because the way our production lines are set up, that it naturally encourages employees to violate that social distance of 6 feet, or
Right.
forces them to work closer than they feel comfortable with working. So you have to be kind of open-minded to, hey, how do we start to readjust our personalities? How do we readjust the production lines? How do we start to track where these potential exposure hotspots that David referred to is? And you don't really know where those are until the employees start to bring in that information up, saying, hey, wait, you're wanting me to social distance, but so tell me how I'm supposed to do this job now. So it starts out kind of defensive, but then it starts to very quickly move into that solution. Let's come up with some ideas. What can we do different? And the employees that work for you are pretty ingenious when it comes to creating change. So that's been very productive. And as the cases start to move across the continental United States, we're starting to get more and more factories that are now using face covering all the time. They're getting some of the PPE in that they've been trying to get. And so now it's, how do we share some of those best practices, that some of the spots that are in Houston, Dallas, Florida, what have they done where they've really been disciplined on managing COVID? So how do we get that best practice out there? And so that's been pretty interesting as well. As far as leading indicators, to drive change, I'm getting ready to give you a Safe Start commercial because I just truly believe in it. You have all your traditional leading indicators that Anthony described, but when you really start to focus on the employee, when real work is being done, and you think about your people, your processes, your equipment, your environment, and then your organization as a general, you start to have breakdowns in each levels of those spots in the organization. And if we can really focus on what's causing the employee to be fatigued, and use that as a leading indicator to drive production or performance improvements. If we can focus on the things that are causing them to be frustrated when it's relating to either COVID or the work that's being done or the things that they have or the things that they don't have, and if we can really focus on the things that are causing them to rush. So I'm an employee, I'm doing work, and I'm finding myself rushing. Why am I rushing? What's causing me rushing? Those are the key leading indicators you need to focus on, because as your incident rates get lower and the organization becomes leaner, then those signals change. So we really start to focus on those new signals, and it's to answer what's the cause behind the frustration, what's causing the employees to be fatigued, what's causing the employees to be finding themselves rushing, and then capture that information and then present that and then create learning teams to get those resolved.
Wow, like that. Ed, I know you've done, I mean, I remember when I heard that you actually had the campaign of going out and soliciting from your employees what is making you frustrated.
Right.
And I thought, I don't know if I'd have enough nerve to do that at SafeStart, actually. I might ask Tag. He's fairly easy to get along with usually, right? But I could hear some people saying, well, you know, how much space do you have left on your hard drive? Tag, what by the way, everybody, Tag also has a focus group with 50, 60 sizable large corporations, you know, potential, not maybe as big as P&G or ABB, but and so he's talking with them on a regular basis. Tag, what like very interesting. What I've just heard so far from Anthony, David, and from Ed is that the most reliable. Now, this is what I took away. It doesn't mean that that's what everybody took away. I took away is that the most reliable leading indicators were the communication from the employees, communicating with the employees, you know, the pre-shift thing, and David going out talking to the people, Ed, you know, where really being able to get that perspective, knowing the people, which I believe would be the most reliable. Yeah. But you've obviously got to have good open trust and communication. If one was looking though just at a, I don't want to be so like spreadsheets or graphs, Tag. I was under the impression that most would be near miss reports, and then maybe observation reports to senior managers. But what have you heard from the focus group in terms of inspections, audits? More. I mean, obvious audits are always important, but I'm never sure what the real motivation is sometimes.
Right. So it's a super interesting question, and it's super interesting listening to, you know, what David, Anthony, and Ed have been saying, because if you look at what organizations have been doing, you listed off 10 things at the beginning. The organizations and the focus groups that we've been running and the roundtables talk probably about sort of 6 or 8 of them fairly regularly. So leadership communication, as we spoke about a couple of months back now, has generally speaking been pretty good from a top-down kind of perspective. So there's been that organizations have generally been very, very effective in that. But when you're talking about what Ed was talking about, risk assessments and things changing and things evolving, lots of organizations have said, you know, that's been a problem for us because we've operated in this particular way for such a long period of time, and now with the social distancing thing, you know, we need to get that message up from the front line. And organizations, a lot of organizations, I want to put this politely, some of them have done very well in that, but some have been not as effective, right? So that's a potential Achilles heel. The other thing that is super interesting, because everyone has been talking about pre-shift briefings, a lot of organizations have been really struggling with those, right? And they know how important they are to their operation, but then they've got to do it in a social distancing kind of format. So the way that the whole thing is kind of pulled together has been problematic, and a lot of organizations have been saying to us kind of privately that they're still doing them because they know they're important, but they're not as convinced they're as effective as they can be. So, you know, they realize that they're in this kind of odd sort of dichotomy, really, where it's essential that they happen, but is it working as well as it could do? And it's been quite difficult. So it was super interesting to listen to that, because it reflects exactly what a lot of organizations are struggling with, actually.
As you may have heard, everybody, Tag's originally from the UK, which is the home of the risk assessment. Yeah, Bede, I'm not saying, just to go to the loo, you have to do one, but just about for anything else. And you really do hear that from people there, Tag, about the value, right? I mean, and I think, I don't think any of us would argue that, big projects, high risk things, stuff like that, of course, right? But the idea that, pieces of paper and checklists can prevent slips and falls, I think obviously is very misleading. But if I was to summarize what I heard with the folks from India and the Middle East, there was a general consensus that if the quality of your leading indicators was not going down, but that the quantity was going up, that typically, like the tide, as the tide rose, the injuries and incidents would come down. And that was to a person. Almost everybody had an example that they could cite where they were either at the site on the workplace or in corporate when it actually happened. So they could sort of give me, the location, date, time, if you will. So I think from what you were saying, the communication, but you also mentioned some of the other leading indicators that were typical. And I did have a question that came in. Somebody just wanted me to repeat those leading indicators again. Okay, so near miss reports, hazard IDs, observations. There's various forms of observations. They could be supervisory observations, peer-to-peer observations. They could be called walkarounds or one-on-ones with leadership. And those were some of the things like, David was talking about, where you're actually going out and talking with the people. And then there are audits, obviously inspections, the number of employee suggestions, quality of employee suggestions. Tag mentioned risk assessments already, and Anthony was talking about pre-shift briefings. And they also do, version, like I said, at P&G and at Epiroc of anticipating error rates or state, where the people start thinking about, what are some of the worst case scenarios and what would be the precursor states leading up to them. So hopefully whoever was that asked the question, you got the list again. I'd be happy to send it out to you via email as well. That 10 things is a lot. But Anthony, what if not the good stuff? I mean, but if you started seeing things heading south in the wrong direction, do you have an example that you could give us from previous epidemics that where you got the company to make a change before something bad happened? I mean, we've all seen companies pivot after a catastrophe, but any examples you can think of where you prevented a catastrophe with proactive leading indicators?
Yeah, so I'll go back to my industrial hygiene upbringing. I know that it's a little out of sorts for this general group, but again, we can tie very closely process reliability and condition auditing and performance in a number of ways to exposure, and we tie that back into our risk assessment process for new initiatives. And we roll that up the chain of command from the factory floor. Here's a substantial change in a process that we're going to make. here's the implications and how these leading indicators play into your risk for exposure. And we go, up the chain of command with those and talk about leadership. So we kind of meet in the middle, factory floor up, top down, with those leading indicators and set targets and goals for those things to be maintained. As far as, I'll cite the example of this pandemic because this is really unique, as I've said before, compared to what were in very many ways limited pandemics over the past, 20 or 30 years. And, a month ago, we were talking about de-escalation. Everybody was ready to get this over. And we've been really pulling in the data and looking globally at community risk and site risk and threats to maintaining COVID safety. And yesterday, our chief product supply officer got every plant manager and every plant HR manager together to have a discussion about three things. One was how do we deal with fatigue, because everybody's COVID fatigued. The second thing is how do we deal with mental health? Everybody is working more hours, whether you're at home. It's very easy to keep your computer on for 15 hours a day, forget to take breaks. And if you are an essential person, you're working, I easily put some 18-hour days in these days in answering questions and responding to issues. And then how do we translate that into an inspirational approach to influencing in our communities? So how do we inspire the very behaviors that we're using in the workplace to combat COVID? How do we carry that out to our communities and make our communities better and really lay that out as a challenge for our employees as to inspire themselves to be better in terms of their COVID performance and their safety performance, but also be inspirational to the people around them. So I really appreciated that, leadership has made that pivot from a month ago to saying this is over to recognizing that we're in this for the long haul and that we're doing some things to plan for the long haul.
Excellent. I agree. Well, I was saying just before we got on, everybody, that I had also come to the same conclusion that it's just going to make something for SafeStart customers to apply the critical error reduction techniques to COVID. But now I'm thinking, no, you got to do something to help everybody, Larry, that's out there, because this error business it's tricky. Like I said, just with the tow truck driver yesterday, right? Total innocent mistakes, but nevertheless, that could have been enough if he was infected or I was, So I think it's a real personal effort for everybody, this thing, Anthony. And that was interesting, though, and it was also a great example as well of seeing a company move before something bad happened, right? David, let me ask. Oh, go ahead, Anthony. Sorry.
Just one other thing I'd interject, as I've said on past calls. This is a very dynamic situation, and I think that one of the biggest value adds for anybody, whether they're a safety leader or other leader, is representing the information as best you can. I'm now over 5,000 primary journal articles deep into this pandemic. My office at home is beginning to look like an academic's office. I've got stacks of printed papers and books and thrown all over the place. It's so dynamic that I'm conducting literature searches at least twice a week, and it's not enough. And the misinformation really makes that fatigue worse. It makes fear worse, and it makes confusion worse. So again, get your message track straight, and the biggest value I think you can be the sound, rational human being in the room when talking to everybody about this issue.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. I just the emails between the three of you and me back and forth, the exchange, the information. Thank you again so much for some of the technical aspects too on all this, Anthony. It's been great, really. I don't think I could have made the program without you. And we got 1,500 coloring books to school district in Alabama. So like you were saying, David, schools, and it's, you know, schools coming back. But and Anthony, like you said too, you know, we, as much as I want to talk about leading indicators, zero harm, felt leadership, and things that I've been, you know, struggling with or listening to safety professionals struggle with for over 20 years, this is an unprecedented sort of crisis here. So, David, what about leading indicators with Epiroc? What, if they were heading south in the wrong direction, which ones would, you know, which ones would you be the most concerned about, and which ones would you, which ones do you think you could get the folks? I don't want to say the folks in Sweden. That might be a little too, you know, blaming everything on corporate. But what would make them move in terms of leading indicators before something bad happened, David?
Well, I think, you know, seeing that we had increases in, let's say we had what we call medical treatment injuries, the ones before their lost time, when people are more complacent or fatigued, or they're, you know, they're starting to see these indications that we're having this. Of course, we have the offset right now. People are working from home more. We have technicians who aren't in the mines. So we may be have a false sense of confidence about that a little bit right now too. But the bottom line is, you listen to all this and look at it, and the truth is, this really, although there's a lot of hard information, like Anthony said, which we have to keep up with, really this is a challenge in a lot of soft skills, as I see it, for managers, supervisors with their people. And to the degree that Rate Your State is already implemented, that kind of thing has already started or been there to some degree. But this is a totally different level of that. And I think that's really one of the bigger challenges, is it has a technical side, but more importantly, it has this side that relates to people's biggest fears and frustrations, because fear is a frustration that are deep down, that are starting to really show up. We've seen less near miss reporting, and I think a lot of people aren't considering COVID as a near miss, and we're trying to tell them, hey, you know, somebody gets too close to you. Larry's little story by his vehicle, his RV there, that's a near miss, right? Where you could have gotten hurt or injured or could have gotten ill. So to get people to turn on that indicator in a COVID context is something we're trying to bring to fore right now. Right now, it's practice. It's the practice of doing the right things and the habit. And then the value of that will be when they do have these situations where they recognize, if I don't practice that, my complacency is going to take over, and then I can have a near miss. So we're actually looking for, you know, from an indicator that our near misses will start to really increase based on this, once they understand that exposure is in fact one of those contexts. I think a lot of times it's been, you know, the more physical injury kind of thing than the health exposure. So I think the H part of safety and health has really gotten shook in this whole situation, and I think everybody's trying to figure out how to deal with it. And I think that's really where they need to focus on, is to get people recognizing that the context of health is just as real and just as relevant to lost time injury as it would be for somebody physically getting hurt in an incident in a factory or wherever.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not trying to sound defensive here, but you know, I did take the keys, put them in my pocket, because I didn't want my son to make sure he couldn't start, like, no communication problem. I don't want you starting it until we're all hooked up, and then made the little COVID mistake, right? You know, so it is a new, it's not that I don't know, but again, you know, being able in the moment, like you've said before, Ed, so many times, right? You know, in the moment is the moment you're in right now. That's what counts. First of all, thanks for hanging in. You don't look like you've melted like the Wicked Witch of the West there. I was worrying when you said it was 40 degrees. I'm like, that's a little oppressive. Tig, would I be accurate from your focus group? I don't know if you've asked specifically enough, but would the usual suspects in terms of the most reliable leading indicators be near miss reports, hazard IDs, observations, and then although they're so required, I don't know how many people actually take a great deal of stock in audits, but what would you say would be the top? I mean, they all do them, but I don't know how many, I don't know how many times they go in and ooh-ah over the audit report necessarily versus I think what we've all been hearing is we like a little more rubber meets the road, like
Yeah.
I want to check the tires myself kind of thing. And that's what I find reliable, right? So
Right.
what in terms of numbers, which ones are the most popular out there with your focus group?
Well, numbers is a tricky question because we haven't asked it directly, but as I said a few minutes ago, that some of these topics people have been talking about and some haven't. Don't remember anyone talking about audits. That's the truth, right? They talk a lot about observations. They talk a lot about near miss reporting. But it plays into again what David was saying a minute ago on near miss reporting. That I mean, I realize I've touched my face twice in this video call, for example, because I'm hot, right? So it's that understanding of what is a near miss and what isn't a near miss in this particular scenario. And I think a lot of companies are wrestling with that. And they're working that, and then the risk assessment piece that I was saying before, and we're changing our operations. We've got new risk assessments, but then catching that information from the employees coming back up when they're saying, actually, we can't do this task or this function and still maintain a social distance or physical distance. So I would say, if anything, is observation, risk assessments, getting the employee suggestions coming back up. They seem to be the three main routes for everybody. The pre-shift briefings, as I said before, people think they're important, but a lot of organizations are struggling with them in terms of effectiveness, even though they know they're necessary. So it would be those three are the ones that people talk about the most.
Interesting. Okay, interesting. And Ed, what would if you were going to try to get the senior folks, either North America or globally, to make a significant change? What proactive leading indicators would likely do something like that?
Well, I'm not going to talk COVID on this question because David really, I don't have anything to add to what he just described. But if you think about safety in general, and you take a look at ABB as a whole company, our incident rates are really starting to come down there. And unfortunately, we still have had some fatalities, but if you isolate it down to individual facilities, the incident rates are pretty low. And when those incident rates are low, you have to start changing the way you ask questions. Are the dialogue around safety starts to change, because the indicators that you have relied on to get your incident rates low are not the indicators that are going to keep the incident rate low. And what we've learned is we have to kind of shift the focus back to leadership. And let me describe that really quickly. Most of our businesses, you could go into any ABB site and you're going to see that all of their policies and procedures are in place, all their trainings in place. You can do those assessments and those audits, and you're not going to find many gaps. You're going to find some, but not a lot, right? Because we do a really great job at managing our management systems. But what in the industry, that's what we do typically in the industry. So if you take a look at leadership and behavior, when your incident rates get low, you have to change the way you think about safety. And let me give you just a quick example. It's not uncommon for any of our sites to do hazard reporting, meaning that we ask people to go out and do a walkthrough and identify hazards. And so let's say I am walking through the plant and I see an extension cord laying across the aisle, right? That's a typical hazard somebody might find. So you would write that up as extension cord laying across the aisleway. That's a tripping hazard. But the way we want to think about that conversation a little bit different is as long as you see that extension cord there, it's technically not a hazard. It's not a hazard. It's not a tripping hazard because I know it's there. I see it's there. So therefore, I know to step over it. So when does it become a hazard? It really becomes a hazard when your eyes and your mind are not on task. So what causes your eyes and your mind not to be on task? Well, you might be frustrated, or you might be rushing, or you might be fatigued, or you're just in that state of mind of complacency. So those are some of the different conversations. Yes, we're going to pick that extension cord up, but it's not, we need to focus more on the things that are causing that extension cord to become a hazard. That fatigue,
that complacency, yeah.
Those things so we're starting to change the conversation around going out and just picking up all the extension cords. That doesn't really, that buys us something, but that's not getting us where we really want to know. It's going back to those behavioral based conversations. And that's where leadership really comes in. So when they're, like Teg's point, when they go out and they do a safety observation tour, or they're going out and into the plans and they're having these conversations, are they starting to talk about safety different? Are they really looking into the behavior side? And then to Anthony's point, you throw COVID in the mix with, you got physical fatigue, you got mental fatigue, and then you got the COVID burnout. What is our conversation around safety look like now? I hope that answers your question.
No, Ed, really well, and thank you again. But I also, it made me think of something too. I just don't know how I'd get it all together for a company. But you know, I listened to a presentation, read the paper. It started, I think, with the Titanic, Piper Alpha, Challenger, the 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and in every one of these major disasters, it was like complacency on steroids, run wild, like complacency to a point of overconfidence, even a bit of a culture of like, you know, squelch the whistleblower. Like the guy did say the O-rings weren't going to go at this temperature, right? You know, he was pretty adamant about it, right? Nearly lost his job over the whole thing, as I recall, right? And they still didn't do it. And that's not a behavioral leading indicator. Normally, like when you go to somebody with this and you show them the metal fatigue, or you show them that the seal, that normally people are not going to argue with you because engineering things are pretty cut and dried. Behavioral things are always a bit iffy. But if you as a senior leader had the ability that you three do to go out and talk to people and get the truth out of them, you could also gauge complacency as well too. And that would be, I mean, I think it's a very predictable leading indicator for disasters, right? That you've got this, we're infallible and we're great, and we've been doing really well, and nothing really bad's happened for a long time kind of attitude. So that'd be a reliable leading indicator. But the only way you could measure it would, like you said, David, going out and doing fairly reliable rate your state conversations, or conversations where you were specifically asking people to rate their own level of complacency, you know, and how difficult it was to keep their mind on task or not. And I think that would be very valuable during COVID as well too, because it's a big footprint on the hard drive as well. So let me, if I can, just we got just a couple minutes to sort of wrap up. So Anthony, if I could, any sort of advice for companies in terms of leading indicators with COVID that, you know, you could quickly recommend they try to do, you know, like walk around once a week, count how you're doing with social distancing or not. I don't want to give you any more examples, just if there were any kind of quick leading indicators you could suggest that people made sure they had with COVID.
Yeah, I think for us, it's been a relatively simple protocol. You know, do we have enough hand sanitizer, and is everybody using it? You know, do we have enough masks, and are everyone wearing one when they need to wear one? And then are we maintaining social distancing as a normal course? And then one of the things that we are doing is we're experimenting with these little things, contact tracing bands, to help our folks know when they get closer, you know, to reinforce that distance, because again, sometimes you don't realize just how close you are to someone, as you and your tow truck driver did yesterday. These would give you haptic feedback if you got within 6 feet of one another.
Yeah, me and Ed and I could have used one of those. Could have used one of those. Thanks, Anthony. David, if it's really a difficult question to ask, especially at the end, but if you could, because I know you can do this, any words of wisdom for supervisors out there if they've had somebody that's just resistant? You know, how if you ran into somebody yourself who was resistant about the mask, how would you handle it? Because my guess is we could all probably follow your lead well.
Well, to me, it's a matter of understanding what the resistance is based on and where they're coming from, and trying to personalize it toward themselves and their family and those they care about, and talk about the fact that you know, would you want X to happen? You know, if you have to recognize that X can happen, do you want to be part of X happening? X can be getting it to someone else. It shuts your department down or shuts the company down, or, you know, you have to put it in stark terms, but just to say, hey, you know, these are the situations. We've had a scenario where we had a department that had to quarantine for, you know, 10 days or so. So it basically took that department out of operation. So it's not a theory at that point, right? And so it's really trying to understand what their hesitation is. And, you know, I think it's empathy, I think, is the key to recognizing that there are people who are struggling with this because of a variety of reasons. But I think that empathy is usually the best medicine you can have toward that. And anybody who really resists it and can't get with it, then, you know, if they can work from home, then we can just say, hey, you're just going to have to work from home. And if they can't, then it's a bigger discussion. But those are the bottom lines.
No, I think I just love listening to the concern in your voice when you talk about this. That's all, because I think that's what it is. That's what gets through to the people. Ed, I want to sort of, if I can, just sort of ask you again, leading indicators with COVID that you would recommend for safety professionals. You know, I almost want to say just get out there and talk to the people, right? But yeah, it's above and beyond that, or including that, what would you say would be the most important leading indicators that people want to be looking at for COVID right now?
Well, you know, we identify several layers of protection for each of our facilities, and it's a pretty long list of things. I'm not going to go through each one of those, but you know, as PPE becomes a lot more available, you know, getting that PPE in the hands at the different groups, you know, whether it be an N95 mask, where it be equivalent of a surgical mask, or it be a cloth or cotton mask, getting them the PPE that they need to protect themselves while they're at work, and not just giving them, okay, here's your face covering, you don't get it, but be able to have enough on hand so that you can rotate that stuff out as it needs to be rotated out. Continuing to educate, because there's, like Anthony said, there's so much misinformation, and our cultures are different. So our sites in the southern states might react different than our sites in some of the northern states. So continue to get good, clean information out there and be consistent. You know, because our cultures are so different, especially when it comes to the pandemic, making sure that we stay consistent in our message and creating that discipline and giving people opportunity to do the right thing.
And get out and talk to them. Yeah, exactly. Tag. I've got to wrap this up, but I was just going to sort of extend the invitation to you and your focus group, and also to all the people listening. If you've got an example where you got to show some proactive leading indicators heading in the wrong direction, and you got the company to make a significant change. We've all got lots of examples where something bad happened and the company made a significant change. I was just looking for a few examples where it was a little more proactive, and within that, I think what I learned today mostly was that the best reality is where the rubber meets the road, and that's where you're going to get the most reliable leading indicators. And that, you can add it all up with spreadsheets and graphs, but it'll never get any better than that if you can get yourself down to that level. And so thank you all very much for this. And I am really looking forward to talking with you in 3 weeks. We are going to be talking about zero harm, yes or no. Lot of controversy about should you have something like zero harm in your mission statement or not. And again, I'm really looking forward to talking with all of you about that. I learned some really interesting things from the Middle East India panel on zero harm. So it'll be interesting to see what we come up with next time. So again, everybody, thanks very much for listening. Sorry for going over a bit. Thank you so much for putting up with the heat. You're still alive. And Anthony, David, and Ed, thank you again for everything and for all your help with all this stuff so far. And ladies and gentlemen, hopefully we'll see you all in 3 weeks, same time. Okay. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And are we still on?